Man, I tell you what, cruising can be wild. I guess the big question I have for today, do we have an out-of-line officer or an out-of-line cruiser? Accusations of abuse of power and somebody that's way unhinged on the cruise ship. Yeah, but wait till you see what this argument was about. Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to La Lido Loca. I am your host, Tony, and well, today is a classic struggle between the powers that be, the cruise ship officers and the lowly cruisers. And it all boils down to a conversation about icebergs. Oddly enough, icebergs. First, let me show you some icebergs. My last cruise port stop in Nanatorlik, Greenland. That's the setting for today's episode. And I ended that day with a fantastic iceberg tour. I showed a lot of it in the video I made for Nanatorlik, but let me show you a few more icebergs just so that we can get some perspective. I tell you what, it was a little bit of a challenging day to get to that point in Nanatorlik where we saw those icebergs, but it was worth it. That iceberg viewing was amazing. But the challenge that we have for today's episode involves this iceberg. This iceberg that was in the harbor just a few hundred feet away from the Caribbean Princess. And to give you some context, the way that we ended up on that iceberg tour at 1 p.m. is that we had to be one of the first people off of the cruise ship so that we could go to the tour company and basically beg them to set up another tour. And beg's really not an exaggeration. When we got to the tour office, we met a couple there that had already inquired to the tour operator saying, are there any more of these iceberg tours? And he said, no, there's not. But then as the interest kind of, ramped up, he said, look, if you can get 6 people together, we can have a 1 p.m. tour. And when my buddy Don and I were person 3 and 4, we were met by that couple saying, we're trying to get people to go on an iceberg tour. And we're like, yes, we will go on an iceberg tour. And eventually we got enough people that we could book this iceberg tour. And we had, like I said, we had to do that early. We were the first people off of the cruise ship to go to Nanatorlik, or the first passengers, so that we could get that iceberg tour. And it was on that first water shuttle trip where the trouble began. Now, if you take a look at this footage, you can tell that I'm sitting up on top of the water shuttle and I'm waiting to leave to go to Nanatorlik. It's like 7:30 in the morning or something like that. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to be the first passengers over so that we can go find this tour. But if you'll notice, there's another water shuttle that's making its way away from the cruise ship. And if you look close, there's only one person on that water shuttle. And they're making a beeline for the iceberg that's out there in the harbor. And probably not 2 seconds longer than that water shuttle getting past us, there's a lady on the top deck there with us that starts loudly complaining that that's a cruise ship officer. There's an officer on that water shuttle and he has commandeered that water shuttle just so that he can go look at the iceberg, and it's an abuse of power. She goes on this big diatribe about Princess always preaching about sustainability, and here you have a single officer abusing his power, making other crew members waste fuel on him to take him so that he can have a closer look at that iceberg to take pictures. The only person on a water shuttle that could hold 100 people. It's a misuse of equipment. It's an abuse of power. Look, I can still hear that lady's voice in my head. And the reason I can hear it so clearly is she repeated that message of abuse of power to everybody that climbed the railing to sit up on top of our water shuttle. She kept that conversation going as we made our way past that iceberg, made our way to Nanatorlik. Sometimes people just, when they're in nature, they just shut up. They just watch the nature and they just enjoy it. Not this case. So many of the clips I have, this lady's just like, it's an abuse of power. Can you believe it? And look, I think we have to determine who's right here, the cruise officer or this lady. But I had another run-in with the lady. So I want to tell you about the run-in. And maybe that run-in is kind of biasing the way I'm thinking about this. But I still want to break all of that down for you. But before we get there, let me quickly invite you to subscribe if you like staying up to date with everything going on in cruising. please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. I just got home from the 16-day adventure to Ireland and the UK and to Greenland and to Iceland, and I made a bunch of travel videos around those adventures. And so if you really want even more context for what I'm talking about, make sure you check out those videos. Thanks everybody who's watched it. Thanks to all the new subscribers. And now let's continue on with this story. Let me tell you about the run-in I had with the lady. If you watch the video, you'll notice that after we made our arrangement for the tour, my buddy Don and I went to the open air museum, which is an open air museum. It's a bunch of buildings outside. You're outside in nature. And I was exploring that open air museum, and it was very serene. I was feeling very close to nature and close to my faith. And I was having a moment. And again, that moment was wrecked by this lady just yelling out in the open her discomfort at everything. I think maybe her husband was having trouble getting in and out of one of the buildings, and she's just yelling at the top of her lungs. It's a door. You know how to use a door. You could just hear the lady all over this place. And I was like, so I kept trying to move away from the voice. And I got toward the end of that open air museum, and there's a winter house that you can go explore. And I didn't see it over there. There was a guide that was near there, and he came up and he said, hey man, you really want to see something interesting? Go look at this winter house. And so I started to make a move down the path of this empty, deserted house that I could go explore. And before I quite made it to the path, abuse of power lady got in front of me, and she just stopped there in the path, and she looked at me and she said, hey, I want to go look at this house, but I just got to know that you're not going to film me. And I was, look, I do my best to be nice to people, but the only thing I could say is, ma'am, there is no circumstance whatsoever that I would ever want to film you. And I think I probably said it with that level of disdain, and that's probably not good, and that was probably snarky on my part, but that's how I felt. Like, I'm trying to make positive travel films. Why would I want one of the most negative people I've run into in years to be on my video? And she's like, well, good, because I don't want to be filmed. And I'm thinking, man, I don't want to film anybody. And especially I wouldn't want to film this lady. And so she goes and looks, and then she comes out, and then when she's done, I go do my thing. Again, my goal is not to really film anybody other than what I'm trying to show you. Sometimes I'm in a big crowd, you end up showing people, that kind of thing. But my goal is never to film anybody. That's not, again, you guys don't know these strangers. And so why would I be showing you strangers? It's a weird thing. So a couple observations. First, we were on the first tender, so that means that suite guest. My buddy Don paid a big upgrade fee to be a suite guest, and that's what got us on that first tender. And so to me, and this is me generalizing, it seems like this was probably a lady of means, like she had a lot of money, and she's used to, she yelled at her husband the whole way, so she must be used to yelling at people. I don't know. Again, I could be biased just because of my interaction. But as I talked to my buddy Don about the action of the cruise ship officer, the question was, is this an abuse of power? We did get another piece of information later in the day that I think helped color that. We heard that this may be one of the very few times that they'd been into Nanatorlik. And so for me, somebody that's a seafarer, especially an officer on a big vessel like a cruise ship, to go out and look at a iceberg in a harbor that may be new didn't seem that crazy to me. And, even if it was just to go out and take pictures and be up close to an iceberg, didn't seem that crazy to me, didn't seem like an abuse of power. Maybe it is. Again, maybe I'm just being biased by my interaction. And I was having some real challenges by how negative this lady was. So again, it could be me. So I'll throw it to you guys. What do you think? Was this lady out of line with her thoughts on the cruise ship officer? Was this an abuse of power by the cruise ship officer? I don't know. But man, I tell you what, I got a few more stories coming off of this cruise of just people that are just angry and rude for no good reason, seemingly. I'm going to share those with you over the next few days. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Again, make sure you check out those travel films from Greenland, Iceland, Ireland, and the UK. I think you will enjoy them. And thanks everybody who's brand new here. Welcome to the Loca fam. Thanks everybody who's been here for a while. I appreciate you watching. If you hit that like button on the way out, that would be awesome. This is Tony for La Lido Loca. And until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.